Hey, hey. Hello, hello. Oh my goodness, I already have two people that are watching live. That's so exciting. Give me the hashtag live, hashtag replay. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. You could drop a GIF, maybe. I can't remember if you can drop GIFs on live streams, but you could certainly drop me some funny emojis or serious emojis, whatever it is that you want to do. I am in my feelings today. So, we're going to talk about how much I cannot stand the go-to coaching slash consulting program format. I cannot stand it. Actually, like I'm already getting warm. So let me just go ahead and take off my jacket and y'all hopefully will forgive me if we end up going a little bit over 10 minutes today because I feel about this the way that I feel almost about pitch slapping, and it took me a while to kind of sort out why. Krissa is here. Okay, she's ready. We're ready to get it going. Okay, Steve is here. Steve, I'm so glad you're catching this one live, because then other people who watch it live or watch it later will be able to see your comments for sure. Steve is a business coach that I have so much respect for in the space, and he's been somebody that I've been following. We've been following each other for a while, and he's like one of the people I look back and see, okay, what's Steve saying? What's Steve think? Because I feel like he and I line up on so much. What do you want?
I'm just going to tell you that I'm done with school.
Honey, you know you do not have to come tell me that every time.
Okay.
Do you want to come say hi?
Hi.
That's Cameron.
I love you, Mom.
I love you too. All right, I'm going to finish telling them about why I don't like this thing. Okay, so that was Cameron. And I love him so much. I love them all so much. But Cameron is 6 years old. He's in kindergarten and he's doing virtual school. So, real quick, we're going to talk about the recommended format for your program. And I've seen this kind of pitched around, recommended, whether it's consulting, whether it's coaching. It doesn't matter. It's like this giant group format. Okay, so typically what happens is they create like a Facebook group. You sign up, right? And you're like super excited. What? He needs a pencil. How do you need another pencil?
I don't know.
Why did you give him another pencil when I gave you a pencil after you gave him your pencil? Stop doing that. Just maintain positive control over your own pencil and send Cameron in to get a pencil. Oh my goodness, everybody needs a pencil. He needed a pencil the other day. All right, so that's just my life, right? Like this is what we're doing with school. But yeah, so the recommended thing is like, okay, here's this Facebook group. You're going to be in the Facebook group, but we're going to have these workshops and there's going to be, group calls and all that stuff. And a lot of times the group calls end up being like live streams basically. And if there are group calls, it's like this massive group call with a ton of people on it. And they are constantly enrolling folks, which means everybody who's in there is kind of at different parts, and that has pros and cons. That has pros and cons in terms of people being at different parts of the process. But with this model, you can essentially create a container that can house hundreds of people in your program, right? And then if you build out the infrastructure where you create videos and you kind of talk to people and tell them, hey, XYZ, this is about this part of my offer, like, and here I am presenting this part and this part and this part, all the things that I promised you, but it's in video format. And then the Facebook group is basically a container for you to ask your questions, right? So that tends to be the format. Problem with this is that it feels often like a self-study support group. I said it. It feels like a course. It feels like a course with a Facebook group and some live streams added into it. Like, especially when it gets that big, right? Hundreds of people. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. It feels like a self-study support group. And then the live streams and everything, those are for if you don't get the material, right? The first time around. Like you just didn't get it. Right now, so the thing is, and I just draw a distinction between, hey, we made this video for you to get kind of like an intro to this concept, but our group call will be about XYZ and we're going to talk more about it, right? So I don't mind videos for kind of like laying the foundation. I don't think that that's bad, right? Like sure, let's get some asynchronous learning out of the way, and then that way I'm kind of already mentally prepped. And then when we do our group call, we could really dive into it. I have no objections to that whatsoever. The problem that I have is that you sold me a coaching program or a consulting program, and I thought I was going to get some face-to-face, even in a group, interaction. I was going to get some face-to-face, but that's not what it feels like. The group is so big, it feels like we're at a concert and you're up on stage, right? So it feels like a self-study support group. The other thing is that it's easy to disappear. It is easy for your clients to disappear when you use this model. And so there's two sides of thought here where people are kind of like, okay, well, if you really want it, you're not going to disappear. If you're really keeping at it, like you're not going to disappear, right? But me, I am somebody who withdraws under pressure. I'm an empath. I'm a highly sensitive person, and I can get overstimulated. And when I do, I kind of withdraw, kind of like a turtle. I don't stay in there forever, but I disappear, right? And so that's the problem, is that when you think about like coaching programs or consulting programs, you're working with people when they tend to be pretty vulnerable, right? Like they're working in areas that's not their zone of genius, or they're getting really raw with you, they're struggling. And so the tendency is to do whatever they typically do to kind of protect themselves and rejuvenate. So this is the other side. Like I'm considering actual human nature here. And so I'm going to tell you that it's not bad that you withdraw. I'm not going to say that that's bad unless it's actually a huge detriment to your whole life and you're constantly withdrawing all the time. But let's be honest, being an entrepreneur is hard. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. It's magnificent. It's more than I could have imagined. But I have learned so much about myself because it is hard. Why are we treating people like this isn't hard? Obviously, I am in my feels today. So I'm going to just take a second to look at the comments. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Oversold, underdelivered. Totally true. All right. You guys are on board with me this morning. Okay. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. Obviously, I am in it. I am in it right now. But so that, like I said, that's my tendency, is to disappear. The coaches that I've signed on with now, like they kind of had me almost at go when they were like, hey, we are keeping things very small. And if you miss a call, like we're going to talk to you, like we're going to reach out to you. And I'm like, see, that's exactly what I need. Like, it's not to say I don't still need to withdraw sometimes, but like, how wonderful is it that just by reaching out, you can make someone feel seen? How wonderful is that? Right. And it's so easy and it's so simple. Oh, wait, Krista needs me to say it one more time. Krista says, say it one more time for the people in the back. Entrepreneurship is hard. Getting information easy. You know what? The hardest part is working through all of your own crap. That's usually what it is. And that's typically what we're asking people to do when we're asking them to show up 100%, is to actually work through their own crap so they can be the best version of themselves. That part is hard. It's hard. So again, I will not begrudge you whatever things that you do, again, unless it highly interferes with your life, then maybe you need to go see a therapist about it. But we all need to withdraw. We all need to take breaks. And so the fact that it is so easy to disappear in these large Facebook group containers that are supposed to be coaching and consulting programs, but they're not. The other problem I see here is that in order for this format to work the best, it's like a big manufacturing facility, right? Entrepreneurs go in, and then what comes out is a bunch of stuff that all looks the same. That's not individualized. That's not tailored to that person's business, right? You can have a specific process that you walk people through that still allows for the individuality. It's like, so Michelle is here, Krista is here, Stephanie is here, Steve is here, and I can all ask them the same question. Like, I've thought of my questions, and when I ask this question, it helps people get deeper into themselves. Okay, I ask the question. There is no right answer. I am asking the question so we can get a specific answer for you, which means all of you would have different answers to the question. That's different than just trying to get everybody to do the same thing, right? All right, so my solution for this for right now is something like I'm doing small group cohorts. That's my solution to this. 5 people at a time, small group. And so the reason why I like this is a couple of reasons. I'm the leader in this area, right? Like I'm the leader in terms of like the branding, the messaging, the authenticity, and business and marketing. That is where I lead. That is where that's why people come to me for this type of work, because of like Ruthie's got it, right? Ruthie's got it. But what that doesn't mean is that I am superior to you. I know more potentially, or I have a different perspective, right? So I'm not going to say I know more, but I have a perspective that people find attractive in this area. And so they want to know more. They want to learn how to apply it to their business. They want to learn what it feels like when I accept them as opting in and I fall in love with their potential and I help them envision the future and we infuse that into their brand and their marketing and their messaging. That's what they want from me. But I don't specialize in their area. So I'm not superior. And so I don't want to position myself that way, which is why I love the small groups. It reminds me of when I was in the Army. The most I was in charge of was a squad. Well, no, that's a lie. Not a lie, an untruth. The most I was in charge of was a platoon of people. But the people I spoke to the most were my squad leaders. I had 5 or 6 squad leaders at a time, right? Because that was the number of people that like I can effectively manage that number of people. We can effectively have tight communication, and then they could go talk to their troops and their squads and their teams, right? So I like that this positions it as a very tight and intimate environment. For what I do for authenticity practice, right? Small groups are fantastic because it is a lot easier initially to get vulnerable in front of a few small people that you know understand your struggle than it is to get vulnerable with a ton of people all at once, right? So if you know, hey, this is my group and there's, Ruthie and 4 other people, it is way easier to get authentic and vulnerable with 4 other people besides Ruthie, right? And so that's why I really like this small group idea. Okay, I've got comments. Here we go. If you decide to show up, so does your coach. Amen. Krissa, I'm glad you agree. All right, I've got a Facebook user who thinks this is fire. Amazing. Thanks, Steve. Not superior, magnetic. And I will say that I'm really proud of the group of people that I've brought together that have been in my sphere who made the commitment for the Why workshop tomorrow, because the caliber of people who are there is fantastic. It's going to be so great. Thank you, Chris. I told you I am feeling very excited about this. Okay, let's see. All right, so I was about to ask you what your solution to, okay, I don't know what you're referring to, but it sounds like I answered it. And then Steve is asking compare to one-on-ones. Okay, so actually I love this compare to one-on-ones. So I am going to tackle that. So in terms of comparing to one-on-ones, I think especially for the work that I do, because I totally value, right? Like I understand the one-on-one, and I think that there's still some work that will be some things will be woven in as one-on-one. But again, kind of tying it back to this authenticity piece, if I do a combination of like one-to-one and group, right, for a particular, again, that small cohort of people who are kind of going through the process at the same time, there's so much value in getting other people's like live perspectives and feedback, right? So like the current program I'm in right now, there's other people in it, not a lot of other people, but there's other people in it who in a way almost serve as like, again, just that opportunity to get that real-time feedback. The other thing that I found incredibly valuable is not to watch it again for a mass number of people, but when I get the opportunity to watch someone go in on, not to go in on them, but to dive deep with someone else. I get a lot of value out of that as an entrepreneur myself, because I'm not at the very beginning of my journey. And so I'm very good at drawing conclusions and information. I gather intelligence on other people's perspectives, and then they can be used as an example. The other thing in terms of one-on-one, the thing that I've found is that my clients are like, but yeah, Ruthie, that's you, right? So they look at me and they're like, Ruthie, you, like, they believe me. They're like, you literally accept me for anything. They literally they're like, Ruthie, I feel like I could call you and you would help me bury the body. And I'm like, well, I mean, depending on why there's a body and not a person, like maybe. But the thing is this goes back to our deepest fear. That poem, the concept that's presented there is when we shine, when we show up authentically, when we are liberated from our own fear, we unconsciously give permission for other people to do the same. And so I think when you have those small groups, you get the opportunity to watch other people light up, right? And other people can almost kind of show you what's possible. But again, the small group creates the environment of safety and security, right? Versus the one-on-one. I feel people look at me and they think, Ruthie, you'd accept anything I'd say to you. You're just that type of person. Like that people tell me, like, I feel like I could tell you anything. And I'm like, it's true. I get it. Right? Like I've made a life out of keeping secrets. That was my previous career. Like if you don't want me to tell people something, like, well, like I know how to do that. But when you have the small group, there's an opportunity for relationships to build. There's an opportunity for vulnerability to happen. There's an opportunity to get other people's perspectives. And I think that that's really valuable to me as the consultant, because there's a lot of lessons to be had there. And then again, with this concept of authenticity, emotional intelligence is so important to it. Emotional intelligence is so important to it. And half of emotional intelligence is our interpersonal reactions, our interpersonal development. So I hope that that makes sense. Okay, it sounds like it makes sense. Steve says, you're persuading me to make my new offer a small cohort instead of a one-to-one. And see, Steve, honestly, like I do, like, it's not that I don't think there's application for the one-to-one. And I know a lot of people think, okay, let's do groups so we can scale. But that actually ties into my last point. This works. This idea works for me right now. It lines up with my values. It lines up with what I want to accomplish in the world. And so it works for me right now. And people will say, well, how are you going to scale that? And I'm like, okay, well, you know what? Scaling comes in a lot of ways. Okay. And it's not always number of people in the program. I've even thought about how I would, quote unquote, scale it right now. But I'm thinking like, okay, if I stagger start cohorts of 5 people, up to 5 people each, then that means in May, I can start a cohort. And then in June, I can start a cohort. And at any given time, I'd be running probably 2 cohorts. I don't think that that's too much. And that allows me to get some time, I think, to settle into the offer, to work out any additional kinks, because I have done it one-to-one. I have done this offer one-to-one. And so it gives me an opportunity to see what it looks like in a small group environment. Right? And if I'm running 2 cohorts at the same time, then what I'm thinking I would do as well is to create opportunities for both cohorts to kind of cross-pollinate. So whether that's like a mixer or some type of like group event where we're all 10 of us or 11 of us, I suppose, if there's 5 in each cohort, would come together and they'd kind of get an opportunity to cross-pollinate, but they would still have their cohort that's kind of running through the process at the same time, if that makes sense. Let's see. Okay, thank you. I'm so glad that this makes sense for people. Thank you. But yeah, so it's like, okay, when I'm looking at, okay, how can I grow this? I'm also not looking at it from how can I grow it from a revenue standpoint? That's not what I'm talking about necessarily. How can I grow it from, okay, my skills have further developed. How can I increase the impact that I can have on people? And I think when I view it through that lens, right, where revenue wasn't the primary factor, but how can I increase my impact, right? Then it caused me to come up with a creative solution. Now, again, I got to test this solution. I got to test it. Don't get me wrong. But I am happy enough with this concept to move forward and to at least try it out and get the feedback, right? And to see how it works. So to that end, I am going to commit to saying that I am going to start my first cohort on May 10th. Yep. I'm doing it. So it'll be a beta cohort, I guess you could say, since it will be the very first group. But I'm going to start that on May 10th. And it will be, I'm looking for a minimum of 3 people. That's what I'll say. I'm looking for a minimum of 3 people. And I'm going to do a cohort May 10th. And that's what I'm going to keep saying, because when you add a deadline to something, it really helps you bring it into reality instead of continuing to kick that can down the road. So thank you so much for watching this. I know this went way longer, but I had some questions, so I wanted to take the time to answer those questions. So I hope you got really valuable answers. And if anybody who watches the replay, if you want to go ahead and ask any additional questions, if Stephanie, Chris, Steve, anybody who was watching said something, be sure to comment on their comment or tag them so we can all kind of talk about it. But again, thank you so much for joining me. And do check out the podcast, because we had another episode released today. And I am just really thrilled with how the podcast has been going. So again, another shout out to Krissa. If anybody's got a podcast going, then Krissa is definitely the person that I will 1000% back and recommend a million times out of a million times. So statistically speaking, you are never going to hear me recommend somebody else besides Krissa. So that's it for me today. And I am just, again, thank you so much for being here. Please stand by. Yep, no doubt. All right. So thank you, Krissa. Yep, May 10th. May 10th. We're doing it. Impact versus revenue. Absolutely. I think when you focus on the impact, then the revenue will come. The revenue will come for sure. Like you create the container for that. Like I'm not saying it just comes if you don't plan for it, but if I'm like, hey, this is the impact I want to have. This is what, I feel is a fair investment for that impact over revenue, but the revenue will still come. So again, thanks so much, everybody. And I will see y'all tomorrow.